Arguably, the most important character in the film turned out to be the now infamous house, which was discovered on a Toronto side street after a long and exhaustive search.
That house is a character in the film. That house is... It is such a presence.
The horror film in general has a long history of creepy houses. You know, the house is often a character in a horror movie. The Psycho house, the house in The Haunting, this movie called The Old Dark House. And Black Christmas continues that tradition.
There was a very clear, strong vision that Bob had about what this picture was going to be from the very beginning. And that's very good, because when that's the case, there's something there for people to work against, to make decisions with.
I saw this little driveway and little private house. I had no right to do what I did, I guess, but I pulled in there, and that was it. That was the house I had to have. The people were very agreeable, kind of tickled pink to the idea. And inside, as a matter of fact, it was in fact a studio, and it was off by itself, well off the street.
It's got the film geography that the story needs, but more importantly, it's got the character. You stood on that little cul-de-sac road and looked at that house, and you knew there was something very creepy possible in there. We took that element and emphasized it very strongly in the picture.
I think I remember from the very first time I was on the set, I saw what the director was doing. I thought that's what I want to do. So this was a chance to really study at the foot of a master, Bob Clark.
He was a young man who was totally confident in what he was doing.
When Bob came on to Black Christmas, I got a big kick out of him because he came in with like Rolodex cards every morning, which had the scene numbers written down and the shots that he wanted to do that day. And he was very organized, and I remember him always shuffling them around and what have you, but I mean, he had a definite plan.
I do map out each shot. Shot 1, shot 2 has a little card, 8x10 card, with the actors numbered, and the camera is a V, and I won't do a movie till I've seen my sets, till I've seen my locations, and I've rehearsed with my actors.
He had planned everything very, very carefully, storyboard, everything. And the moment he got on the set and described the shot to me, I understood exactly what I thought he needed and what the scene needed and how it was going to be filmed.
In order to maximize my quality, I had to minimize my waste. Time is everything for a low-budget film, so I don't want any of it wasted.
Bob wanted Edmund O'Brien, the Oscar-winning actor, to play the detective. I negotiated a deal with Edmund O'Brien's agent for him to come up 2 days before we needed him on camera, so he can get his wardrobe done, so he could do his thing. And I went to the airport to pick him up. And he came out of the airport in a wheelchair. And I thought, gee, how is he going to play this part? But he got stood up out of the wheelchair, and I breathed a sigh of relief, and he walked towards me, and we shook hands.
We went to visit with him for the first time after he arrived, and I sat there talking with him, watching for 45 minutes while he tried to put his coat on and talk.
We went into Yorkville to a restaurant to have a meal. And halfway through the meal, Eddie stood up and said, I got to go to my room. I said, but Eddie, where are you going? He said, I'm just going upstairs to my room. I said, but Eddie, you're not in the hotel, you're in a restaurant. He didn't know where he was.
Edmund was just coming down with Alzheimer's when he took this part, and this man in 3 nights was going to have to go out in 10-degree Toronto storm weather out for that hunting of the young girl's body.
Finn and I looked at one another and thought, well, this man can't possibly play the part of the detective. What we're going to, and we're 2 days away from shooting on it.
If he hadn't been shooting outside, I think I would have taken the chance with him, even though because he could do a line, but he was clearly losing it.
I had to go into Eddie O'Brien's room, and I had to tell him that he's not going to play the part. He insisted it. He said he was fit enough to play the part. And I said, but Eddie, you don't even know where you are. And here was I, some young whippersnapper, telling this great actor, because he was a great film actor and he's done some wonderful stuff, that we couldn't use him and we had to send him back. It was very traumatic for me as well. And he burst into tears, and it was a very sad thing. If we hadn't got John Saxon at a moment's notice, we would have had to abandon the production. We had no completion guarantor on the picture, so we couldn't lean on anybody to help to come in and fill in the plug if we had to cancel the film.
I got a script called Black Christmas. I read it and I thought it was going to be successful. So I agreed to do it, and then a short while later, I got an apologetic phone call from Toronto, someone telling me, I forget who, that a mistake had been made, that someone else in the production had cast the role, and they were very sorry, and I was very sorry too. I don't know how long later, maybe days, I got an urgent call from my agents. Could I get on a plane and go to Toronto today?
We got John Saxon with great luck. John was available, and the same agency handled him.
Came up, got off the plane, went straight into wardrobe, got fitted in wardrobe, went into makeup, and was on the set 2 hours later, right off the airplane.
It was already, I think, midnight, and or maybe later, and I was driven out to a location, and it was a scene out in the park. It was cold, snow on the ground, and I started doing a scene about maybe 1:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning.
There'll be 2 sets of dogs leading the way. Just spread out and follow them. So the first thing we'll do...
It was like 10 degrees that night. We were in a good blistery, cold Toronto winter.
From the film's compelling opening sequence onwards, Clark puts viewers in the mindset of the killer, Billy, by using a chilling subjective camera. This style would go on to be imitated in numerous horror films that followed.
There were many filmmakers who had used that killer's POV shot before, but that was the first time, I think, as a movie nerd, I was aware of that particular shot, taking the killer's perspective.
I think what they hit on, without necessarily even knowing they were doing it, is that classic budget restriction. You know, what you don't see is more terrifying than what you do see. The idea that the closest you come to Billy is an eyeball through shadow, a couple of shots of a bloody hand, and that voice. You create a logic to the film. You fill in the blanks of the movie much more effectively than they could have done in 1973, and much more effectively than people can do now.
I remember one movie, I can't remember, it was a 30s film where they did a moving camera, subjective point of view for about 10 minutes in the movie. It's a reasonably famous movie. It's the only time I've ever seen it. Seeing that the one time, it was real clear the cameraman and the arm were not the same. I didn't want that effect.
I ended up making a body brace, which basically allowed you to place the camera right on your shoulder, right here. And it was hinged, and it had like a safety belt at the waist, which held it on. And it had a pad down the front, so it would allow, I could lift it up, and that would allow the camera to tilt up like that. When I read the script, we had all this POV stuff, and I said, you know, I think I could probably go over and even climb up that trellis with this whole setup. I know we did it the first day that we shot at the house. Once they saw that, they knew they had, well, you know, we basically got the right technique and things to use throughout the picture. Bob wanted to keep the audience on the edge of their seat. I don't think you ever wanted to really see who the killer was, which was the whole point of that. I mean, you only saw his shadow come in. At the very beginning, you see sort of the shadow of the head and that come in at the house, but you never, ever saw who it was. The magazine and the camera was more or less where my head was, so when the lights would hit me, you would see my shape on the wall, but you wouldn't see the camera because my body was actually hiding it. It was always my hands, whether we had the plastic bag in front of us or going crazy up in the attic.
This movie, I wanted a sense of we were being circled all the time. The camera subjectively and objectively was circling and closing in and filling in the spaces. And it's hard to do on a $400,000 movie.
He set it up where you actually see through the killer's eyes for most of the beginning of the film, that by the last half, he's then switching. Bob's able to utilize some of those techniques because then you're not sure later in the film whether you're looking through the killer's eyes or you're looking through the camera's eyes.
But only for a moment.
Every day we were putting track down or boards, whatever we needed to do things, and part of the problem is keeping that stuff out of the shot itself, because a lot of the shots did 180, 200 degrees, some 360s. In that house, I kept getting my shoulder bashed. As they went through the one set of doors, we'd be dolling through the other, and sometimes I wasn't quite in the right position at the right moment, and you hear this big whack, and the camera would go take a bit of a spin.
The shooting of Black Christmas took place in Toronto in the winter of 1973-74. Though the budget was tight, there was a general atmosphere of fun and enthusiasm on the shoot.
I remember being picked up every morning, and Olivia would already be in the car, and I usually was disheveled and often slightly hungover. Olivia was very straight to me in those days. I remember trying to make her laugh, and I don't think I always succeeded. She was determined that she was going to marry Paul McCartney, and that was the height of Beatles stuff. And I thought she knew Paul McCartney, but she didn't, but she decided she was going to marry him.
We were filming one of the girls dying, and she was in a rocking chair, and they had me get a clear dry cleaning bag to put over her face after he kills her. And she's rocking back and forth, and the cat jumped on the chair on its own and started licking her mouth.
You go out there, something walks, cat runs across the set, something happens that you, oh my God, I've got to take advantage of that.
It's really frightening that this cat is trying to bring back his dead owner.
The snow technology wasn't then what it is today. And we ended up with a kind of foam that they used at the airport if they had planes coming in that lost their landing gears. We had to have fire trucks. They had to hook up to hydrants, and they put these great nozzles on the bottom of the fire hose and blew this stuff everywhere. And so you're sort of dependent on a fireman to know where you want the snow to go, first of all. And don't put it on the side of the house because it takes forever to get it off.